The air smelled of pine and new beginnings when I pulled into my freshly leased home in Cedar Ridge Estates. After years of city noise, cramped apartments, and neighbors who thought midnight karaoke was a community service, I finally found my piece of peace, a quiet suburban home nestled in a cul-de-sac, complete with a spacious garage and towering oak trees. But that peace would be short-lived. My name's Marcus Grant. I'm a 34-year-old construction manager, quiet by nature, practical by profession. The lease was in my name and my cousin's, Sheriff Eli Grant, the county lawman and occasional pain in my side. We split the rent while he saved for land nearby. I was happy to let him crash. Having a sheriff on the lease felt like an invisible security system no one would ever trigger. I should have known better. The trouble began the moment I unloaded my second box from the truck. "Excuse me," came a clipped, nasally voice behind me. "You can't just block the street like this." I turned around, sweat trailing down my forehead, to see a woman in her late 50s, a bob haircut stiff with hairspray, a clipboard clutched to her chest like a holy relic. Her salmon-colored pantsuit gleamed like armor in the morning sun. "I'm Karen Whitmore," she said, "president of the HOA. She paused for dramatic effect, as if she expected me to curtsy. "Hi, just moving in," I replied, motioning toward the truck. "Won't take long." Her eyes narrowed. "Did you fill out the HOA vehicle parking compliance form? Large moving trucks aren't allowed during restricted hours, especially in the mornings." I raised an eyebrow. Didn't see anything in the welcome packet about that. She clicked her tongue and scribbled on her clipboard. "We take pride in this neighborhood. The last thing we need is for new tenants to bring congestion." Her gaze swept over my truck like it had personally offended her. I exhaled slowly, smiling tight. Understood. By the time my cousin Eli showed up, Karen had made 3 passes, each time scribbling something or snapping photos of my moving truck. Eli, ever the joker, leaned over and muttered, "Is it your parole officer or your neighbor?" "No," I grunted. "That's the HOA president. Apparently, our truck is too visible." Well, he grinned. "She's going to love the cruiser I'll be parking here." Things escalated on day 4. I came home from work to find 2 delivery trucks jammed sideways across my driveway, both illegally parked and partially blocking the entrance to my garage. My jaw clenched. It wasn't just inconvenient, it was deliberate. Someone had placed bright orange cones around the area, and a sign taped to one truck read, "Driveway blocked due to violation investigation." Standing smugly nearby was Karen. Behind her were 2 of her cronies, retirees with nothing better to do than micromanage grass height and monitor dog poop policies. "What is this?" I barked, pointing at the trucks. Karen smiled sweetly. "You were warned about vehicle policies. Until the HOA board reviews your compliance documents, access to the driveway is restricted. You don't have that authority." "Oh, but I do," she said, tapping her badge-like HOA ID. "Article 14, Section 7, Emergency Violations and Blockades. We reserve the right to temporarily obstruct access if there's suspicion of noncompliance." I wanted to laugh. Suspicion of what? Parking in my own garage? Karen raised an eyebrow. "Don't play games, Mr. Grant. You've already failed to submit your landscaping preferences and alarm system specs. Those are required forms. And now we've had reports of excessive noise from what?" I interrupted. "Unpacking boxes?" "Don't get aggressive," she snapped. "You people, my blood boiled. What did you just say?" Her cheeks turned pink. "I mean new people. Renters. You don't understand how our community works." Before things could escalate further, Eli pulled up in his sheriff's cruiser. He stepped out, his uniform crisp, badge gleaming, and leaned casually against the vehicle. "Everything all right here?" he asked coolly. Karen's smugness turned brittle. "Officer, I'm handling a compliance issue." "Funny," Eli said, "because you've parked 2 unauthorized commercial trucks on private property. That's trespassing and obstruction." Karen blinked. "This is HOA sanctioned." Eli pulled out his phone and tapped something. "Marcus, you said those trucks are on our leasehold?" "Yep. Lease includes driveway and garage space." Karen's tone turned shrill. He's just a tenant he doesn't own, but I do share the lease, Eli said smoothly, producing a copy on his phone. Sheriff Eli Grant, you've just obstructed a county officer's property access. Might want to think real hard about your next words. The look on Karen's face was priceless, like a balloon deflating in slow motion. Her cronies inched away from her, like rats leaving a sinking ship. She opened her mouth, then closed it. You have 5 minutes, Eli continued, to get these trucks out of this driveway. After that, I'll have them towed. And don't even think about reporting it as an HOA expense. Misusing HOA funds for personal retaliation is a felony. Karen tried to regain composure. We'll be reviewing this incident at the next board meeting. Be sure to send me an invite, Eli said, since I'm now requesting to audit all HOA financials under Section 112 of the Community Oversight Act. Karen paled. The trucks were gone in 10 minutes, but if I thought that would be the end of it, I was wrong. Because Karen wasn't the kind of person who gave up when caught, she doubled down. 2 days later, I got a citation in my mailbox from the HOA for unauthorized garage modifications. When I opened the door to inspect what she could possibly be referring to, I found the hinges on my garage doors had been drilled shut from outside. The screws weren't mine. I had video footage of a man in a maintenance vest fiddling with the door at night, but the footage cut just before I could get a full face. I looked at Eli. Think she's trying to provoke us? He leaned back, eyes narrowed. She's either insane or she thinks no one's watching. She thinks the sheriff's badge is just for show. Eli smirked. She's about to find out it's not. The morning after Karen had the nerve to drill my garage door shut, Eli and I sat in the kitchen going through every HOA document I could find. The air was thick with coffee and quiet rage. Eli, dressed in jeans and his sheriff's department polo, looked more like a lawyer than a lawman as he pored over the HOA's printed bylaws. She's abusing Article 14 like it's her personal hammer, he muttered, highlighting line after line. Emergency obstruction? That's for, like, gas leaks or sinkholes, not punishing people for unpacking a truck. She's treating us like squatters, I replied, clenching my jaw. But she's not above the law. She just doesn't think anyone can touch her. Eli looked up, eyes sharp. Then, it's time someone reminded her she's not invincible. By noon, Eli had sent an official inquiry request to the County Housing Authority and placed calls to 2 former HOA presidents in nearby neighborhoods. He wasn't just leaning on his badge, he was building a full case. What Karen didn't realize was that being sheriff wasn't a part-time gig with a fancy car. Eli had real authority, and now he was using it. That same afternoon, Eli walked around the neighborhood in full uniform, clipboard in hand, knocking on doors and calmly asking neighbors if they'd experienced undue HOA harassment. Many looked hesitant at first, but as soon as he mentioned Karen by name, the stories poured out. She fined me $200 for a Halloween pumpkin display. She told me my daughter's tricycle was a safety hazard. She once removed a campaign sign from my lawn and said it was political clutter. Eli took every statement down, carefully, legally, but the biggest break came from an older couple who lived 2 houses down from us, John and Mary Tilden. They had lived in the neighborhood for over 20 years and had documentation going back a decade. Karen's been like this since she took over the board, Mary said, but she got bolder after she rewrote some of the bylaws 3 years ago. She changed the voting rules. John added, now, she can approve emergency measures without a full board meeting. Eli's eyebrows rose. That's not just shady. That's illegal. By the end of the week, he had compiled over 40 pages of documentation, complete with resident testimony, photos, and HOA meeting minutes. And he wasn't done yet. The next HOA board meeting was held in the community center, one of those faux colonial buildings with a brick facade and plastic flowers. Karen sat at the head of the table, flanked by her usual loyalists, Mr. Doyle, the gray-haired fence inspector, and Ms. Preston, the self-appointed noise czar. The moment Eli and I walked in, Karen's fake smile snapped into place. Well, she said, folding her hands. I see the tenants have come to observe. I'm not just observing, Eli said, setting a thick folder on the table. Sheriff Eli Grant, co-lessee of 108 Meadowlark Court, and today, I'm here on official business. Karen's smirk wavered. This is a private HOA board meeting. We have procedures, which you've been violating, Eli interrupted. Repeatedly. He opened the folder and began distributing copies of his report. This packet includes 14 resident complaints, photo evidence of trespassing and unauthorized property modifications, and misuse of HOA funds. The board members looked uncomfortable. Even Ms. Preston began flipping through the pages, her lips tightening. Karen tried to regain control. This is a smear campaign. All hearsay. I also have recorded testimony from 3 former HOA presidents and financial inconsistencies tied to recent vendor contracts, particularly the moving truck blockade you orchestrated using HOA funds. Silence swept the room. Eli leaned forward. Under the HOA Oversight Act, Section 112, a sheriff has authority to investigate suspected abuses within private housing associations. You've crossed the line, Mrs. Whitmore. Karen's hands trembled slightly, but she stood up, trying to sound strong. You're just a tenant. No, I'm a tenant on a legally binding lease that includes the garage, the driveway, and the property you tampered with. I'm also the elected sheriff of this county, and I'm filing a motion for immediate administrative suspension of the HOA board pending a full audit. Gasps echoed from the attending homeowners. You can't just, Karen began. I already did, Eli said calmly. The paperwork has been submitted to the Housing Authority. They'll be here within 72 hours. Suddenly, the room was abuzz with murmurs. Some of Karen's loyalists began quietly slipping their papers into their bags. One neighbor raised his hand. If she's misusing our HOA fees, do we get refunds? Eli nodded. If misappropriation is proven, yes. Karen's face twisted in fury. You'll regret this. You don't know what you've started. Eli stood tall, voice low but clear. You drilled a sheriff's garage. Shut, Karen. I know exactly what I started. The investigation moved quickly. The county's housing enforcement officers showed up the next day. They interviewed neighbors, requested bank statements, and took copies of Karen's revised bylaws. Turns out, she'd not only rewritten sections illegally, she'd also been awarding maintenance contracts to a landscaping company owned by her nephew. No competitive bids, no transparency. Fraud. When they pulled her phone records and security footage, they also found out that the man who drilled my garage, he was paid under the table using an unreported HOA account labeled Emergency Structure Enforcement, a fake budget category. More fraud. The final nail came from a USB drive submitted anonymously by a former HOA secretary, audio recordings of Karen instructing a maintenance crew to make life miserable for Eli and me until we broke the lease. Eli played the audio for the HOA audit committee himself. Karen's voice was unmistakable. By the end of the week, the board was officially disbanded. Karen was removed from all HOA duties and placed under formal investigation for HOA fraud, wire misuse, and harassment. She was also slapped with a restraining order, barring her from stepping foot near our property. Her smug, salmon-colored pantsuit was nowhere in sight when the sheriff's department escorted her out of the community center with her clipboard tucked under one arm and a citation packet under the other. In the weeks that followed, the neighborhood transformed. With Karen gone, residents began relaxing. Real smiles returned to their faces. Kids rode bikes without fear of citation. People painted their doors without begging for approval. A temporary HOA committee was appointed with oversight from the county. Eli was invited to serve as an advisor. Though he declined, he preferred being the watchdog in the background, as he put it. The biggest surprise came when John and Mary Tilden, the retired couple who helped Eli, came over with a homemade pie. We never said this aloud, Mary said, but thank you. You stood up to her when no one else would. People like Karen count on everyone being too tired or too scared, Eli replied, but I don't scare easy. As for me, I finally fixed the garage, got the hinges replaced, doors repainted, and installed a new camera system that covered every angle. But honestly, things felt safer than ever, not because of the tech, but because Karen's reign of petty tyranny had ended. Then came the for sale sign. Karen's house went on the market within a month. The real estate listing tried to call it a charming community with light HOA involvement, which made Eli and I laugh for 10 minutes straight. The day she packed her car and left was unusually sunny. She avoided eye contact with anyone. Even her cronies had distanced themselves, embarrassed by the spectacle. As her car turned down the cul-de-sac and disappeared behind the trees, Eli cracked open a cold soda and leaned against the garage door. "Well," he said, raising the can, "here's to garages without trucks. Or tyrants." I laughed, "Or fake emergency obstructions." We toasted in the driveway. Two cousins, finally free of the clipboard menace that had tried to turn our home into a war zone. And as the wind rustled the oak trees overhead, I couldn't help but feel that the peace I'd been chasing all these years had finally arrived, not just because of the house, but because of the lesson. Sometimes the only way to deal with a power-hungry HOA, Karen, is to remind her who really has the badge.